Hello everyone. In this podcast we are going to talk about why actually you don't need a Redux anymore. Okay? So let's begin with this podcast. So Redux has been tied with React projects for many years now. I even see job posting for React that require Redux experience and knowledge of significant knowledge of React and Redux, and the job posting requires significant experience using React, Redux. Well, they are not the same. And why would someone need significant experience with the Redux to get this job? I didn't get it, but that's not the scope of this podcast. So the point is that the industry is treating Redux as it is a synonym with React, and you need to know Redux to code React applications. This is absolutely not true. So let's step back and revisit what Redux is and what problems it solves. First thing we are going to discuss in this podcast is what problem does Redux solve? According to the state of JS survey of 2022, over 43% of respondents have answered that state management is among the top 3 of the JavaScript pain points that they are struggling with. Libraries like Redux were used to relieve this specific pain point. The React Redux is a state management library that is extremely popular, and it provides an external storage to store your entire application's state. Now, what is a state? State is a data that can change. React components read data from this store and dispatch the actions to the store and can also update the store. The Redux store is the source of truth that contains the entire application's current state. Redux solved state management concerns in large React applications, but often teams have used Redux before they needed it, right? This caused applications to be bloated. Now, do you still need a Redux? Now, fast forward several years, the React ecosystem has grown so much, and the question arises: do we still need Redux? The answer for most of the cases is no. You don't have to go to Redux as the default way to manage your React application's state anymore. And there are other alternatives that you can consider instead. Today, there are different approaches to state management before you reach out to external state management libraries like Redux. So, here are some steps that you can take while managing a state within a React application. First, start with local state in React. You can use React without any external libraries, and simply you can use the state hook that comes out of the box most of the time. Let's say you want to fill out a form, click some buttons, interact interact with the UI on your page, etc. You do not need a state management libraries to manage all of this. You would handle the state locally by simply using the use state hook. Rule of thumb is always use the local state in React as your first option. Always keep remember this thing. Second thing, pass down prompts. Now you started with local state, but there are child components who need this state. What would you do? There is where prop drilling comes into picture. You can simply pass down state via props if a child component needs it. And the and let's take an example that we have two components, the counter and the counter info receives the count as a prop from the parent component counter. This is a common pattern you can use in React to pass props from a parent to child or down the components. Props cannot be changed and can be passed down to components that need it. This works perfectly fine for simple use cases, but as your application grows, prop drilling could be cumbersome if you pass down props through a chain of components. This could result in code that is harder to read and manage. Now, third option is React Context. React Context is designed to share data that is global for tree of React components. You can use React Context when there are parts of your application state that needs to be shared with entire application tree. For instance, user information, theme information, language settings, etc. are examples global data that is shared across the entire application. React Context works very well to store global data like this. This way, you can avoid passing props through multiple layers of application or components. Context APIs is quite simple. First, you need to create a state context using function create context, and it will return a provider and a consumer. The provider wraps the component tree where you expect the children to consume the state. So, for example, let's create the blog info context. It is provider wraps around the necessary components, and within the children component, you can now access the state using use context hook. Simple enough. You can learn more about using the context API in detail from any blog post on the internet. Keep in mind that you don't want to reach for context at all times. It needs to be used only when it is truly needed. Okay. In comparison to Redux, the context APIs is easier to use, less complex, and comes out of the box. Fourth option, we have the React query. So far, we saw how we can manage the application's state with just React using local state, prop drilling, and context. React query is a library that can be used to manage the data fetching for you. It is a server state library that is responsible for managing asynchronous operations between your server and client. Redux is a client state library and not to be confused with React query, but where React query help is that it replaces the boilerplate code and related wiring used to manage cache data in your client state, and it replaces with just few lines of code. Okay, for for the most part, once you use React query and migrate all the async code to it, the remaining client state within the application can be easily managed without the use of something like Redux. Other alternatives, what can be the other alternatives? Other alternatives to React queries are other libraries with similar functionality, such as Vercels, SWR, and Apollo Client. Apollo Client comes with inbuilt local state management options that you can consider if you would like to manage a state via Apollo. So, alright, guys, hope you enjoy this podcast and you find something insightful. And I will share some resources that will help you in your journey to learn React and state management. So, thank you, guys.